Okay, good evening. And yeah, today I'm going to talk about the book, Henry DX Complete Guide. And I'm going to go over quite a bit actually, but as a good journalist, I'm going to answer all the W's and the H's. Who I am, what was I thinking, why I wrote the book, how I wrote the book, the whole publishing process. So if you ever wondered about that, want to know more, what was needed to make the book reality. There was a couple of surprises there. What you need to do if you want to write one, how long it took, and all the other good stuff. And where the heck did I find the time? And I still don't know. And also a bonus is what I'm working on next. Okay, most people know me here, and I didn't send out the Zoom like I was going to others because I was worried about the bandwidth. But Lucas, W6AER, and about 300 entities, 8-band DXCC, 9-band WAS, and I'm literally active on everything up to 10 gigahertz on satellites. And I build a lot of antennas, love digital and SDR. And since people always ask, yes, I was born in Europe, and no, I don't have a tech background much. I do work in IT. About 20 years now as an IT director until next Thursday. And there's a big change coming. No, I'm not retiring, but there's a change coming. And I also run an IT consulting company, but now I have 2 side businesses, and more on that later. I'll be talking about it here. So why did I write this? So basically when I started DXing, I had a really hard time finding books, articles that were current, or things that really answered my questions. So basically, every time I found something, I felt like I was in the audience. And frankly, I found a lot of information out there that was bad, and it actually cost me money at times. And so 10 years later, I said, maybe I should write something based on my experiences. A lot of articles that I did find always talked about how, you know, their way is the right way and the only way, and I found over time that that's not true. There is, you know, no one right way of doing things, many wrong ways of doing things. Sure, you can really screw things up, but you know, there's more than one way to skin a cat, you know, as they say. So, however, I didn't know it was going to be this complex when I started, and I'm not sure I would have started, honestly. So, was I even thinking? Kind of. When I started writing it, the contents got out of control really fast because every time I turned around, I had more ideas like, oh, I should put this in there, I should put that in there. So I'll talk about it a little bit. So the book took about 2 years to write on and off. And I set aside small bucks of time, but I never forced myself to write. I figured it's finished when it's finished. I already took 10 years. What's another one? So, but the book ended up being rewritten twice, reorganized twice, and I'm not kidding. And part of it was due to the flow and printing costs. And then I sent it out to beta readers, got feedback, I made even more adjustments. So essentially what I started with barely resembles what you're seeing now, which I didn't expect, but that's okay. So this is the long section for what and how. So what it took. Okay, how did I come up with the title? And why is it so long? So basically, the short answer is not alone. A lot of people gave me input. I actually talked to a couple of people about what it should be. And I kind of liked them all. I wanted something that's memorable, but it's easy to understand what the book's about. So I didn't want it to be too cryptic. And it's actually a lot harder than it sounds because I came up with some really cool titles, but if you're not a ham, you wouldn't know what I'm talking about. So I had to, you know, do something catchy. And the title actually changed several times over the writing. Actually, you know what? I forgot here one section. That's okay. Hold on. No, okay, that I didn't, sorry. I thought I forgot a slide, but I didn't. So the goal was a complete A through Z guide And so I figured someone who just got licensed, like 10 years ago when I got into DXing, I had a lot of questions on antennas, balance, hardware, software, getting basic station set up. I mean, that's a really basic questions 10 years ago. And I wanted to make sure I covered that. The controversial topic of grounding, I'm sure we all heard that. And QSL design, etc. But I didn't want it to be something that is boring, quote unquote, for people who are more experienced DXers. So I picked a few more topics that I'm really interested in, like RFI is a big thing for me. Those who've seen my station know I have a lot of ferrites and a lot of noise reduction all around the house. So I'm very aware of RFI issues. FD8, of course, is a hot topic, digital modes. And if you look at the book, I'd say about a quarter of the book deals with, maybe not a quarter, but a fifth of the book is pretty much digital modes. So the heavy focus on digital modes. And the most important section on how not to be a lid. That was my favorite section to write, and I did some heavy editing before the book was released to give it a little nicer spin because I went off on that one. So what did I not cover in the book? Products I did not like, I didn't recommend because I didn't want to say anything bad. So I didn't call out any products by name, but yeah, it was really tempting, like I mentioned here. And you can kind of figure out what they are without me saying that. Those who know me also know I have a lot of strong opinions, but I felt like if I didn't like something, I'm going to leave it out. But I did fail the first time. I didn't really have a positive tone in some areas, like I mentioned a minute ago in the lid section. I was being a little too honest, so I chopped probably 4 to 6 pages in the lid section, just to keep it a little more positive. I think it's a good balance now. So how did I come up with the topic? Basically, people had questions, and I was a Elmer at the San Francisco Radio Club for many years, and the same questions came up pretty much monthly. I also run a blog at W6AER, which gets pretty good traffic to my surprise, and again, many repeats, and like I said, the kind of like the Groundhog Day movie, you've seen it, it's kind of like the same day over and over again. And I follow chat and Triple C and a bunch of other email based discussions. So I always keep my eye open, and it seems like there's a pattern too. Some of the same questions get repeated every couple of years as new people come on board. Ham radio Slack channels, online user groups like the FTA, WSJTX user groups, same things. It seems like different people ask you the same exact questions. And so it's pretty easy to figure out what people want to know. Now, side observation is a lot of people don't read. So, because I've seen discussions where people say, hey, do X, Y, and Z. And then they go back and forth 5 times until they return back to do X, Y, and Z. And then, yeah, so that wasn't my target audience, because those are the non-reading people. And it is a book after all, right? Okay, so next, what was the goal and how I got there? So my target audience is easy. That was me 10 years ago. Basically, I wrote what I wanted to read 10 years ago. But I wanted to keep it appealing to everybody. Sorry, I've been talking all day, so hope I don't run out of juice. Writing, that was relatively easy, but took the longest. But I actually learned a lot because I didn't want to write something that's inaccurate, so I double-checked everything. I did a little extra homework, read up on things, and while doing that, I actually ended up learning a lot, which is was a nice side result, if you will. Publishing is what everybody fears, but I decided to go independent, and I'll talk about that and why I did that, and I'm going to explain how I did that step by step. It's actually not that bad. The design of the book I actually really like doing. I have a kind of an artistic side, I guess, on the side, so that I enjoyed. And the marketing, that was not my cup of tea, but again, learning experience, but I'll talk about that too. So today you're going to learn a lot more about book publishing than you ever thought. So I set a goal, and I kind of had to find, that's where I want it to be. Something that's affordable with good information, but I didn't want it to be expensive, which I'll talk about in a minute. And it almost ended up being very expensive, but I figured out a way not to do that. But I also didn't want it to be what I call birdcage liner. Yeah, I think I got pretty close to where I want it to be. Not perfect, but I got close. So what does a book need? Eye-catching back cover, eye-catching cover, sorry, or back cover. People shop with their eyes, so I had to kind of design that. ISBN number, I'll talk about that if anybody's curious. I'm sure everybody knows what it is. Copywriting, that was an adventure. I actually took it a little further. I did the whole Library of Congress thing and the cataloging and publication, and I'll talk about what that is if you're curious. Those are optional, but they're good to do. And how I went about these, the cover, Photoshop and Canva, basically. Those are the two things I use for the design. Pretty easy. A lot of royalty-free image libraries on the internet. I decided I did some paid ones. I am not so sure they're really worth it, but NASA has a royalty-free image gallery, and it's really, really good and free to use. And that's where the front image came from, actually. And those who are not really good at design, Canva is a really good option. It's friendly. And I'll, basically, if you ever decide to do this, you have to make sure you follow the printing standards, the CYMK format and my resolution and so on. But that's a little more than you probably need here. So this is the template I get once I finish. And this is from Amazon. So essentially when I finished, I told them it's going to be X number of pages and the size. And they send you a PDF that looks like this. And you have to design your cover. And this is what the actual layout looks like when you finish it. And this has to perfectly line up or it will be crooked as heck. And trust me, because I got one that looks horrible. My first attempt was really goofy. So, but that's essentially how you design the cover. It's once you do it, it's actually easy. But if you've never done it, it's interesting. So you have to get an ISBN number. not as hard as you think. Poker is the place where you get it in the US. It's a 13-digit code. I bought a 10-pack, and you need to use one ISBN number for each version that you publish. So I have one for the paperback, one for the hardback, and one for the Kindle edition. And if you ever wondered what those little numbers are on the right side, and I did not notice until I got into this project, you've probably seen those things in the back where it says in this example 5199. First digit refers to the currency type, so it's dollars, and then the 4 digits after that is the actual price. So if you see a 90,000, which is what you're going to see on a lot of books, now you're going to probably pay attention. In the back, that just means there's no price given. And you'll see a lot of those in the back of books. So a little trivia for you if you're on Jeopardy. And that's what an ISBN page looks like when you log in. So this is mine. Assigned ISBN numbers, digital, paperback, hardback, just if you ever wondered. Kind of behind the scenes look. And this is once they're settled. And once you use an ISBN number, you cannot reassign it. So that's assigned to that book forever. Minor edits are allowed, but that's about it. Like the price you can change in a couple of minor things. Copywriting is pretty easy too. Copyright.gov, it's government, so it's very slow as expected, right? To copyright a book, a lot of people say that the books are copyrighted, but sometimes they're not. They just write copyright. And unless you actually go through the process, it's not actually truly copyrighted. So cost is about $100. That took a lot of clarification and going back and forth because I am using some third-party photos. And so I had to obviously give credit to the actual people who took the photos. So you can, just because you put it in your book doesn't mean they're your photos. So I have to get clearance. Also, Bruce is not here. He wrote a small section, so I have to be very specific. Like this was not written by me. So, so Bruce, if you're listening, you are on the copyright. I don't know if I told him that. So, but basically it has to be specific. So whoever contributed photos, Mike is, I think, online. So one of your photos, Mike, are now protected. And this is what it looks like. So until you got this in your hand, you're not really you don't have a certificate. So this I think is pretty important for intellectual property, especially with the internet. And yes, I blocked out private information. That was me. The LCCN, again, is just the Library of Congress number. It's actually free. You can apply for one. And once you do, and the book gets published, they actually ask you to send a copy to DC. And hopefully it made it on the shelves. I don't know. So one of my bucket list items is to actually go to the Library of Congress for other reasons. I just always want to go. But I'm going to go look for my book, see if it made it. Maybe it's there, maybe not. And I don't know if you ever seen these in books, catalog in publication, which is a CIP, they call it. And this is what libraries use to figure out what to put on the book so they know where to file it. And all I gotta say is YouTube is your friend, because I figured this out using YouTube. I literally went online and just said, okay, how do you do this? And how and why did I self-publish? So it gives me the ability to use different printers. Like the big famous ones are Ingram Spark, ARL and CQ also do this. But I didn't want to go that route, and I ended up just saying, okay, I'm just gonna be a little ambitious and go all out, and I decided to form my own publishing company. And it's surprisingly simple. Legal paperwork is around $200. I use LegalZoom. $30 notary fees, and et cetera, et cetera. For under $300, at least on paper, you can start a publishing company. And here's the interesting story. And I think everybody's going to be laughing in this room. And that's the story behind the name. So the name came to me while I was multitasking. I was looking at vitamin supplements on Amazon and listening to the W6AER repeater. And as you know, that's a PX spotting repeater. And I said, vitamin D, vitamin DX. So true story, that publishing company name came from listening to the repeater and looking at Amazon vitamin supplements. I'm totally serious. That's literally how it happened. So there you go. And the logo was designed by Canva and Photoshop. I told a couple of people and they're like, no, you're making it up. No, I am dead serious. So I had a lot of Kindle concerns, and I know it's spelled it okay here on purpose. Kindle's kind of a pain. Yeah, I don't know if anybody ever published anything on Kindle, but they like to have everything very tiny. They have a really weird pricing structure. And if you ever notice when you go on Amazon and the Kindle books, a lot of them are $9.99 price. Now I know why. Up until the $9.99 price point, they give you a 70% royalty, which for me is about $6 in every Kindle sale. If you go even a penny over at $10, the formula is now 30%. That means I would have to sell this book at 2.5 times higher for the same royalties. That's some voodoo math if I ever seen it. So now you know why there's so many books that are $9.99 on Kindle. And I'm not going to charge $25 for a digital copy. I'm sorry. So the pricing. So basically, Kindle ended up being $9.99. Paperback initially was $19.99, but due to COVID and inflation, they raised the printing costs. So we have to adjust everything across the board. Okay, so the printing costs. So basically, the way that Amazon does it is the first 100 pages are the same cost. So whether you do 25 pages or 100, same price. But I had initially nearly 600, you're not reading that wrong, pages in the original format. And that was because I was going to use a smaller 6x8 format, which is more of a pocket-sized, normal-sized book that you would expect to see. And those who've seen the book, this is a much bigger book now. So I moved it up to an 8x10 format because Only thing that matters is the pages. So you can have a 4x5 or a 8x10, and Amazon doesn't care. You look at the number of pages. So I said, okay, well, I'm going to get the best bang for the buck. So I reformatted everything, which took me a whole day, to an 8x10 format and an 8.5x11 for the hardcover. Essentially, this cut it down to 290 pages after I removed a few pages and resized some photos. So the book would have had to sell for about $50 if I had not done that, for me to make a buck. So I pretty much didn't have a choice. And this is what it ended up looking like on Amazon, and the price. Now, anybody heard of Kindle Unlimited? Probably a few people. Okay. So basically, Kindle Unlimited is a thing where you pay a monthly fee, and certain books are flagged as ones that you can read essentially for free, but it's not really free because you're paying a monthly fee. It's kind of like Amazon Prime, you know, it's not really free because you're paying, but you get free movies, right? So I enrolled in that because I figured there might be a few people who wouldn't purchase the book otherwise. And that actually literally pays per page read. So they actually track it in the Kindle when you have a book checked out, and about 1 cent per every 3 pages is what it seems to be coming out to. So if you're ever curious about how that works, you're not going to get rich on it. Let's leave it at that. So how do I get paid? Royalties are basically divided by regions. And every month I literally get multiple deposits as small as 7 cents into my bank account based on who read what where. Like I literally had like 7 cents coming from India last month. Somebody read probably 50 pages of the book. So they do not just issue one check or one deposit. It's literally by region. They convert that local currency, euros or pounds or whatever, and then they do mini deposits. So every third or fourth of the month, I see a bunch of small little deposits coming in. I'm like, oh my God, I'm not gonna add it all up. So anyway, it's interesting. DX Engineering sends a PO. I ship to them. I do 2 shipments actually, one to East Coast, and actually ship directly from Amazon because they're my printer. East Coast to Ohio and West Coast to Nevada. They send me a check, much easier. I much rather deal with that. And now, as I mentioned, they're carrying it too, which I'm really excited about. So initial reception surprised me, but it's not this anymore. At one point, I hit number 6 in radio communications and number 6 in radio operations when I initially published. Now I'm back down during IDXC. It went up again. It's like a roller coaster. So, but it was nice to see. I actually did a screen capture here because I said, "Oh my God, I'm up to 6." And then I was hoping to get a little higher, but I'm never gonna beat the licensing guides and the Ham Radio for Dummies book, which is the #1 seller. I can't use that title, though I get in big trouble. And reviews are important. Amazon looks at who reviewed your book, and interestingly enough, they don't really care if they're bad reviews. They just want to see reviews. Good is better, so don't go in there and give me ones, please. But they do look at it, and based on that, they recommend your book. And as you know, they know people's shopping habits. They know what you're looking at. So people who are looking at Ham Radio related things, this might get suggested, and the more reviews and ratings you have, the more likely it will pop up. How do I market the book? This was interesting. I don't have a business degree, but I have YouTube, so I read about it, or more like watched some videos on it. Better way of putting it. I run some Amazon ads, Facebook ads. I'll talk about that. QTH banner ads, website traffic through both the publishing company and my own. Handouts with QR codes. I brought some here. These actually pay for themselves, and I'll talk about that. But I highly recommend that if you ever do something like that, presentations and social media. But to be honest with you, Amazon ads and these handouts probably are the #1 way that the word got out. and this is the card I designed. I literally paid $40 for 1,000. And if this size looks familiar, it's the same size as a QSL card. So if you're paying more than $40 for 1,000 QSL cards, you're overpaying. I have a good place. Let me know. Because I literally do the same thing with my QSL cards. It's also in the book, by the way. I give it away. I give away a secret on how to save money on it. These are banner ads I designed. And QTH is a program where you pay $100 a year, not per month. And they basically rotate your banners. And they give you a weekly report with click-throughs. And, you know, it's a very targeted audience, right? Because QTH is usually people who are ham radio folks, unless they're really, really lost. And, but I get a surprising amount of click-throughs here. So that's kind of nice. So if you have any kind of a ham radio product that you're selling, I do recommend QTH banner ads. I really do. Promotional materials like these inline ads, I created this for Facebook. I would not recommend doing Facebook ads. I feel like I threw money out the window. So take your money, set it on fire, same result. Your mileage might vary. I was not impressed with Facebook ads. I also ran a little video promo. I'll show this. I don't know if it's going to work, but this is a little video promo that I put together. I have a video editing background, and I used to do special effects work. So this is actually from Canada, and so basically, this got a surprising amount of clicks. I was surprised. People get intrigued, like, what's that? Oops. So next one. So here's the promotional campaign. So if you're in the back of Amazon, this is what it looks like. It's a little weird. So for example, I got 205,000 impressions. And there's the spend and the sales and basically your turnaround. So there's multiple things. You can do a Kindle box screen ad. Those of you who have a Kindle, there's two ways of buying it. You can pay like $20 or $30 more, and you get a Kindle that doesn't have ads. Or if you bought the cheaper one that has the ads when you open it up, well, people like me are paying for it. So basically, that's where you get those suggested ads that, you know, if you like the book, like, oh, what's this? You click on it. And that's the only time I actually get charged. I think it's like 15 or 20 cents if somebody goes there. And it's kind of interesting to learn how this works. But yeah, Amazon ads actually do help promote the book. There's other ones too. So the who and how numbers. Who are the readers? 90% are US. UK, Australia, and so on. There's a lot of other countries. 12% of the profits are Kindle. 66% of people who still like Dead Trees, that's paperback books. And the initial sales were actually, the spike was 35% with a second spike at IDXC, which wasn't a big surprise, right? So that's kind of the breakdown if you're curious. Any questions so far, by the way? Nope. Okay. I'm not putting you to sleep, I hope. Okay, so what's next? Because, you know, I don't have enough work and business in my life. It's a curtain. So this is what I'm working on now. So this is my ham radio. I mentioned it to Pete here. This is the book I'm working on, and I'm calling it, for now, Bird Hunting for Amateur Radio. And it's basically about satellites. And this is actually the book that I initially wanted to write when I was thinking of writing a book. Because when I got relicensed, I was more interested in amateur television and satellites. And DXC came later. That was like a secondary addiction. So this is what's coming in. But there's three things I would love. And actually, this is where I want to kind of open the floor because I have some questions for people here. Oh, before I do that, sorry, this is just a summary of what is going to be covering. And yes, you can work DX on satellites too. I was just talking to somebody about that. So this is tentatively what's in the book right now. So would there be an interest in a second edition of this book possibly in about 4 or 5 years? Things change so fast, like if I had written this 5 years ago, FD8 wouldn't be it. I mean, there's a lot of things that people have brought to my attention that I should include. The one that comes up the most is more writing a little more about, for example, solar panel interference. I think 7 or 8 people have asked me about that now. So that's definitely going to go in there if I'm writing another one. But if somebody thinks of something else that maybe I missed, or something that's blatantly obvious, the more eyes, the better. Let me know. However, I'm wondering, the size will grow. Might have to make it 2 books. I don't know. Volume 1, volume 2. So that's something that we'll see. But yeah, if you have any ideas, suggestions, things that I missed, I would love to hear it because actually, people who reached out to me had some really, really good ideas on what they wanted to read more about. So if you have any, let me know. Shoot me an email or whatnot. I probably will do a second edition in about 4 or 5 years, which is around the time that I'll be probably changing out from working full time. So I'll have more time. And what you can contribute, if you bought the book, I would love it if you can leave an honest review. I don't need it to be 5 stars, but I would love to hear your thoughts. Amazon and DX Engineering. And DX Engineering is my preferred vendor. And I make the same on both platforms, so I don't really care, but I want to make sure I reward DX Engineering for their support of DX Expeditions. So please support them. They're good people, so if you got to pick between Amazon and DX Engineering, buy from DX Engineering. Not the Kindle version, because that's only Amazon, but you know what. And this is where it's at DX Engineering. And that's it. Any questions, comments, complaints? Complaints go to Frank, but any questions? Yes, Andy.
Well, I'm really impressed not only by the book, with thank you for the opportunity to be a beta reader.
Yes, and thank you for your input.
Absolutely. But I'm also, I contrast this with my wife's experience. So she wrote her first book about 6 or 7 years ago. She is a food historian.
Okay.
And so her experience was there was this publisher in England that published a whole series of books. And so, they published her book. They did a beautiful job on the pictures and the layout. And I think her royalties today, the book has sold quite well. Her royalties today are about $200. So they really, really rip off the authors. So I think by doing it yourself, you really kind of put yourself in the driver's seat.
Well, so I didn't want to go into too much details, but essentially, if you're independently publishing, you are, and I'm not in it for the money. I really just wanted to do it for the love of it. You know what? I'm not going to say that money is not nice because I can buy more Henry deal stuff. But the $200 I broke the first week.
Yeah.
So now it's obviously slowed down, but definitely, if you can self-publish, even if you need to start a publishing company, $300 can make it back in a couple of weeks because they do take a lot. My copies, if I order it as a author copy, these are $4.12 if I order my own copies. That tells you a lot. Anybody else? Yes, John.
Yeah, I think one topic that's not well covered is how do you protect your solid state amplifier? Lots of guys kind of think that solid state is the way to go. I know I do. I've built, I guess now, 4 solid state amplifiers. But other guys think, gee, vacuum tube amps are a lot more robust, but more difficult to blow up, and that certainly is true. There's a topic that really deserves some.
Somebody else did ask me to maybe explain the differences a little more between tube and solid state. Well, I might call you in 4 years.
Okay.
Maybe we'll talk.
Hopefully I'm still there.
You'll be here. Yes, that's actually, I like that. That is something that might be worth exploring. Yes. Anybody else? Okay.
I would recommend not a revised edition, but a second volume. Because you're going to want to spend a fair amount of detail, I would think, on things like solid state versus
Mhm.
tube amps and RFI, not just solar. That would be one piece of it.
That would be a big piece. That seems like the number one thing that people come to me about. If they saw all the stuff I wrote on RFI and ferrites and all that, because I'm really big on that.
Yeah,
And one of the things that scares people to death is putting solar panels on your roof and having basically gone deaf essentially.
yeah,
And I have solar panels
I do too.
and it's fine, but I also had them install ferrites. And I got really quiet inverters. I did a lot of homework on it, so. Okay, well, that's all I had, so thank you.